Hey, the internet, how you doing? It's February already. We're in the second month of the year. Welcome, everybody. My name's Aaron LeBeau, and we're on the Couchbase virtual meetup for the month of February. With me, I've got my great friends Nitish and Baz. Nitish, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Aaron. How's it going
Oh,
for you?
we're some minor COVID issues in our house, but we're surviving. So, Baz, how you doing?
Yeah, doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's February. It's getting closer to like not being cold here in the U.S., which would be really great. I'd like to get that warm weather back, to the point where it's not so freezing cold outside. But yeah, so I think it's going good. So we have a great show today. We have John that's going to join us a little bit to talk about eventing and low code solutions and dynamic data, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But first, we have some housekeeping to go through. So to start out with, one, I'd like to show off some stuff that we've been working on with Learning Paths. So most of you don't know, if you don't know, on our developer portal, we have a link called Learn now at the top. These are really great. Learning Paths are designed to walk you through the core basics to like learn how to do something. And so there are multiple tutorials that we kind of build together to build out you so that you can learn a concept. And this month, we have two new ones for mobile, right just in time for the new version of Couchbase Live Lite 3 to come out. So we have both a Couchbase Lite for Java for Android developers, which is really kind of great. It walks you through the fundamentals of how to get up and running. It walks you through how to query an embedded database, and then it shows you how to do data sync fundamentals, so you can figure out how to get yourself up and running with Sync Gateway. It shows you how to set up like Docker and get Couchbase Server and Sync Gateway set up, so you can take your mobile app on your local laptop, like run on an emulator or simulator, and get it running with Sync Gateway with Couchbase Server. So that's really kind of a cool thing. Now, of course, no platform left behind. We don't want to so I showed you Java here, but the cool thing is we also have Swift for iOS developers. So, regardless if you're Android or an iOS developer, we have a learning path for you now. And these have been recently updated with Couchbase Lite 3. So this is latest and greatest. So if you're going to go learn, this is a great time to go take a look at these tutorials. Right now, live on the site is both iOS and Android. For our .NET friends, our Xamarin developers out there, we do have one that we're working on, and it should hopefully be out by the end of the week. And so as we kind of work through those and get these updated for Couchbase Lite 3, check back in the developer portal. Like I said, probably by the end of the week, we'll have the Xamarins up and running. And so all the cross-platforms options then, whether you're iOS, Android, or doing cross-platform with .NET, we'll have a tutorial for you, a learning path of for you to get up and running. Now, Nitish, I know you've been working on some really cool stuff. What have you been working on lately?
Yes, Aaron. I'm really excited to show so we have talked about Playground for a while, but we haven't really actually shown it on stream actually. So let's just try to, so I just want to show you how you can actually use the Playground along with our latest and greatest database as a service solution, Capella.
Awesome.
So, I mean, you can actually go to couchbase.live and then create a Capella session. Yeah, so I already have a free trial account where I have a cluster which is set up, but it just takes 2 minutes to set one up. So it's really easy, and you can go to your connection, and you can get the connection string outside, and just put it into the sign up form. And you also need to set up a database username and password. So I've already set it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think,
this looks pretty easy so far. So it looks like you need a connection string value. That would make sense, right? To tell it where it is in Capella, username and password, so you can get security. Okay.
Yeah. Let me see if I remember my password correctly. But let's see. I mean,
of course, you have to tell it you're not a robot, right? So you have to type in one of those crazy codes that they require. Yes. That all makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, so basically that's all that you had to do. And yeah, here on the Capella screen, you can actually see the credentials. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Looks like I have already set it up, and you can basically go to any language that you like. You can run all the examples that you want. So we have some examples for key value operations, like running nickel queries. Yeah. Also, you have full text search here. Yeah. And
so
also,
this looks amazing. So if I understand this correctly, you don't have any of the SDKs installed on your computer. You don't have any Docker images. This is literally just you having a Capella trial and then going to Playgrounds, linking those two sites together with your personal information, and now you're able to see all the stuff without doing any installation.
Yes, that's correct. Everything runs in your browser.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, come on. There's no better time to try out this. Look at this. Literally, the amount of friction you have to do to get yourself up and running, and look at some like Python examples, maybe throw in to do some machine learning examples, or throw in and checking out with a database or Scala or .NET. It looks like this is really easy to get up and running.
Yeah, this is the easiest way to get started with Couchbase.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. That is amazing. I mean, less than a couple minutes, it looks like you're up and running, and you can start running code and stuff. Very cool. Thanks, Nitish, for showing us off to us. Baz, I know you've also been working on some cool stuff. What have you been working on?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, and thanks, Nitish. So yeah, I'll show what I've been working on recently. So as you might have seen, the Scala SDK for Couchbase was released a while ago, but we didn't really have any tutorials for this yet. So I've been working on developing a tutorial as part of a learning path. So we'll see some more interesting things in Scala soon as well. But for now, we have a quick start in Couchbase with Scala. So if you're familiar with Scala, the ecosystem is quite diverse. So there's loads of REST API frameworks, etc. And this basically tries to do a bit more than maybe a normal tutorial and actually use 3 of the more popular frameworks. So this is Play, Akka HTTP, HTTP4S. So wherever you come from within the Scala ecosystem, you can kind of plug and play Couchbase into your system. So what this tutorial does, it's a small user profile application. So you can create profiles, maybe with an email, a name, and a password. So of course, we try not to store that password in plain text. That's one of the things. It's very easy to get started. You clone it, you run spt run, and it will launch 3 web servers, 1 for each of your favorite frameworks. If you like Zio, it can be an exercise for yourself to try that one and implement it yourself.
Awesome.
So post all the standard methods, really. The code is all public on GitHub.
Awesome. That's amazing. You know, Scala is relatively new to the family, so it's definitely about time to get some love. I know there's a lot of functional programmers out there that really think that Scala is pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. You know, it's different, and so having stuff out there is better than having to look at Java tutorials, right? So something to be said about that.
Yeah, there's certainly some cool features in the language. I mean, if you like, so yeah, actually, I'll show one nice part of it as well. If you want to play around with it and maybe you don't have an environment set up yourself, you can press the Run It Now button.
Okay.
This will launch Gitpod. It will normally take a while, so I've done this for you. And you basically get a VS Code-like environment.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's awesome. It looks like you got your Swaggers already up and running. You can go look at your code. Oh, man, that's awesome. So once again, kind of like Playgrounds, this looks like it's low friction. You basically just go there, click the Run Now button, and then in less than a minute, you're up and running. You got an editor, you got the code, and you've got examples, and you don't have to get anything. You don't have to set up Docker images or anything like that.
Yeah, and if you want, use your Swagger. You can immediately start playing around. You can post a profile if you want.
Now this is cool.
There you go. We get a response back, something that's up in it. And yes, we do salt our passwords, so that all seems good. And if you think you actually want to implement our quite general controller and write something for your own type, for your own REST framework, you can go ahead, and rather than having Akka HTTP or an HTTP4S one, you can just add another one as well.
So there you go. You know, obviously, if you want to, you have your own framework, way to include it, throw it in. It looks like this is pretty easy. Boz, thanks, man. This is amazing. Once again, 0 to hero. You guys are amazing because Nitish, you showed me 0 to hero to get Playground up and run a Capella. And then here's Boz showing me 0 to hero. But you know, I got nothing. In less than 2 minutes, I've got something. So that's awesome. So obviously, folks, we're constantly doing new stuff over on the developer portal. So, you know, check back and check often, as you're going to always see new things out there as we're constantly looking to improve. We also like feedback. So please hit us on the social medias, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You can hit us on, you know, Facebook, anywhere that we're talking. You can go ahead through it and hit us up if you have any requests for new features. Now, at this time, I'd like to bring on my good friend, John. John is an amazing one. He's been around for a very long time. He's got a lot of knowledge in his brain. He's a principal product manager here at Couchbase, and he is the guru when it comes to eventing. Now, for those of you who don't know, eventing is like this really cool way that you could run some code on basically on server side and do things like low code solutions. You could do things like, dynamic data updating and those kind of things. I think of it like store procedures on steroids, basically. So, John, I've heard you got a really great talk for us to kind of go through and maybe show some people that don't know about eventing the cool things it can do.
Yeah, I actually love to take this opportunity to expand the knowledge of this service. As you said, it's a low-code environment, and we take care on the server side all the scaling, whether it's horizontal and vertical. So you only focus on the project. You don't have all the friction on spinning up an app in Spring, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to go through a little bit. It's akin to a post trigger. So eventing will respond to changes or mutations in your data. And so as your data flows through Couchbase and mutates, eventing is a post trigger. It'll say, hey, this item, this document has changed, and you run a small fragment of JavaScript code or a lambda. So we have integrations. We natively talk to our data service, which I call KV, and we natively integrate with our Nickel language, which is SQL++. You also have the ability to talk to external REST APIs via curl, and there's another output, and that's your application log. We do have some users that might hook up Splunk and listen to what you log as a user for your eventing function or Lambda. So it essentially runs in near real time. And one of the cool things about it, you can make point tools to completely scrub like billions of rows of data and fix it if you got it wrong. Now, we do have something called timers that you can trigger at some point in the future. So that's because we take away a few items out of JavaScript. So it's not pure node. We take away async, and of course we take away the browser extensions, and you can't have globals. And unfortunately, you can't do your library imports right now. But for what it is, it works really cool. So I've got this screen here, and if it works, you can see we just got a mutation, goes into Couchbase. Couchbase responds to the mutation, and then it might set something in the future. And so that future could fire off another function that could change some data in the database. And then when we just move on, we can have multiple functions. We're not just limited to one. Typically, you deploy server 30 functions. We have some customers that run 18 at a time. And that's generally sort of the flow. But I want you to understand that eventing isn't like an SDK that reads a piece of documentation and gets a piece of documentation back. It's a DCP consumer. So it's a database change protocol consumer. So it latches on to all our vBuckets, which is our sharding technique, and it's a fire hose. And what we do is we abstract away all the pain of working with that. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about what the eventing lifecycle is. We have this DCP stream, and we can create functions, we can deploy them and undeploy them, we can pause and resume them. And that's really cool because you could have some code that's not quite running right, or you have a change that you make. You could pause your function and change your code and resume it on the very next mutation. It just kind of queues up and you don't lose anything, okay? We have an integrated debugger that's available in the server issue of it. We're working on putting it in Capella. It's not in Capella right now because Capella is locked down so tight for security reasons. It's not even funny. And of course, as I said, it's JavaScript. We can edit settings, we can import, we can export, and everything you can do in an eventing UI can also be done in a CLI. For instance, I'm going to go to a server right now, which is on a local small one node box, and I'm going to do something. And well, first let's just cat. What is this? Cat. Make this big. there's some commands. Okay, so we have a CLI. We also have a REST API, which you could do with curl. This is going to create buckets, and it's going to create scopes and collections. And then at the very end, it would flush everything in it. So I'm able to just say, hey, let's just do this, go to town. And I'm setting up a system so I don't have to like manipulate the UI a lot. I can manipulate the UI. When this is all done, I can just go to buckets. This is doing what it's doing and it's flushing data, but I could add a bucket and, name it what I want, my BKT, give it some space, tell what type of bucket I want. Eventing works with Couchbase and Ephemeral. Since I only have one node, I don't like to be bugged about replicas. This is not for production. And I could enable flush or whatever I wanted to do or set a TTL on the bucket. And so that script I showed you just sort of abstracted away some of the pain to set up a lot of stuff for this demo. So just get rid of that bucket, drop it, it's gone. So without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to go into a simplistic example, okay? Under eventing, we have really detailed examples. If you want to use eventing, I highly recommend that you go to the examples and you run through at least 2 of them. They are step by step and they are super detailed, okay? Once you get 2 of those under your belt, then I recommend you move down to these scriptlets. Scriptlets are made just to give you the straight and skinny and get you working, okay? So let's go to a detailed example, okay? This is in our server documents under eventing. So I've got data enrichment, and I do 2 things where I take a document and I change it, and I put it in another collection or bucket or key space. Case 2 means I update the document itself. So we're going to kind of go down to case 2. And of course, this screen will take a long time to refresh. I know what I'm doing. So let's just talk about this. I'm going to import a function into eventing, and hopefully this screen will sometimes render. There it is. So we're into case 2 here. And this is talking about, hey, we're going to have this document. Maybe I'll make these 2 documents. They're strings, okay? I want to turn these strings into numbers, okay? And what I'm going to use those numbers in, because that's what my application wants. It doesn't want to parse these strings. I did this wrong. I got my data wrong. I might have, 100 million documents that I need to update, okay? So what we're going to take a look at is the eventing function. We end up setting a listen to location, which is what we stream data from DCP. So this is going to go to the bucket bulk, the scope data, and a collection called source. And everything that changes in that, we're going to get. The next item in an eventing function would be the storage for a scratch pad for eventing. Eventing checkpoints every 30 or 60 seconds so that it could recover and pick up where it left off, or checkpoints when you pause and resume. And we need this little scratch pad. We also need it if we do timers in the future, because that stores the context of and the data that we execute against when we reinvoke a function in the future. Then we have a function name. We have a feed boundary. This is set to deploy from everything. So what it means, it's going to go back to the beginning of time and subject to dedupe, because if we've changed a lot of documents fast, DCP only gives you the latest, the current document. And we'll stream through it, and then we'll get to current state, and then maybe you might get 1 change a minute. It'll pick those up instantly. Or you'll get 1,000 changes a second. It'll pick those up instantly. Now, I could change this feed boundary to now, not caring about anything in the past in the source collection, okay? If I open up settings, I could adjust the workers up from 3, which was the 6x, or from 1, which is the 7x. And a worker has 2 threads, and that's 2 threads of execution. So I could set my workers up to say the number of physical cores I have. I have 12 on this box. I could set it up to 12, and it would run faster because I'd have 24 execution threads. Okay. Now, if I 2 nodes in my cluster, I'd have 48. If I had 4 nodes, you can see we get a lot of threads execution so that we can keep up with DCP. Now, under bindings, this maps into your JavaScript. I said, hey, I'm going to make a bucket alias. I'm going to call it source. And source is going to be bulk data source, and it's going to be read-write. Now, we're going to see what that looks like in the code. So in the code, it just exposes that as a JavaScript map right there about line 5 or 6. And I can use that to either read or write or delete documents. So that's kind of cool. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to run this right now. So basically, I'm going to import. That was a actual eventing function from the examples. So I'm going to just import this from, it should say enrich case 2. So we're going to open this up, and you'll see that that entire screen comes in. It's going to be identical. There's our alias that becomes a JavaScript map, okay? Then I can hit next, add code. It'll dump me into the JavaScript code editor. Right here is where I say, we're going to write back to the source bucket. Now, eventing's pretty cool because it'll suppress the source mutation so you don't get into this recursive loop. Like, hey, I changed the document. Oh, now this comes back to my Lambda. Oh, I changed the document. This comes back to my Lambda, which could crash a server. So we automatically suppress that. And what this is doing, okay, let's see what happens here. I'm going to actually come into this entry point or handler of the Lambda. I get a copy, and it's a copy of the document, and I get some metadata. Meta.id is the key of the data. And then I say, let's just add a new field based upon this function, passing it this current field in the document, okay? And we'll do the same thing based upon this using the same function. So this function just splits apart the IP, does a little bit of math, okay? And it returns a value, returns an integer, all right? So this is kind of cool. I didn't change anything, so I hit back, and we're done. So if I deploy this function, and what we're doing is we're just sort of short-circuiting a lot of, the manual work from this big function here. So I'll scroll down. Here is a document, and we're trying to make these 2 numbers in real time instantly, okay? So I'm going to go to our documents, bulk data source. Hey, that's what I want, add document. And I'm going to do this like my key. And I put this in, make sure it's legal, looks legal, and I save it. Now, instantly, and I say instantly, our document updated. Oh my gosh. There's our starting number. There's our starting ending number. And if I change this, say 7, remember that starts 879, save it again. Let's take a peek at it. 762, well, I believe it worked. I don't know for sure. Let's do 17 and 15. It did work. I'm joking. Okay. So there you have it. We're instantly changing data in the bucket. Okay. So I walk through what I call a big detailed example. So, and I highly recommend that you guys, we're going to go back to eventing. I'll just undeploy this function and we'll end up deleting it. Now, what I recommend that people do is do 2 or 3 of these examples, really get to know what eventing is and how it works. Then go down to the terst scriptlets, okay? And these things are just made to be really simple. For instance, if I wanted to experiment with the curl gets, okay? So I have a basic function called the curl get, okay? We're going to open that up right here. Let's just delete that function, get rid of it. We'll go back here and we'll take a look at what's going on. This is really, really basic basic, easy stuff. And I'm going to go, I give you 2 URLs that if I go to them, I'll probably get the latest exchange rates. So let's go here. Let's see if we can pull in some exchange rates. Okay, curl q get. Hey, yeah, we got some exchange rates. Odd, Belgium. I'll probably have the euro. This is all related to the base of the euro. And so yes, so this is live. So that's really good. All right. So now I give a little instructions under version 7, how to set it up. And that's basically in the settings. Under version 6, which is just bucket based because you don't have scopes and collections, it tells you what to do. And then we have a function. Okay. Now this function basically uses curl and it does a keep alive. So if you have a wicked fast server, you can maintain like 50,000 curl requests a second. If you're going across the internet and the server is really slow or waiting on something, think about it. If I take 1/10 of a second to respond and I only have one worker that has 2 threads, I can't get a lot of throughput. Okay. So that's when you might up your workers to like 20 to 30 to get more throughput, more parallelism. But, that's just something that's a little bit advanced to understand, dealing with throughput. Now, let's pull in this function. I'm going to import it again because it's a little easier for me. And this was a scriptlet. Okay. So I'll go into my scriptlets things and we are going to go in and try to find something. Boy, there's so many examples in here. It should be basic curl get. I open this up and let's inspect. So this is going to listen to bulk data source. We have our scratch pad. It has a name, deployed from everything. And this is interesting. This is another type of binding. We have 3 bindings right now. We have a bucket alias, which exposes a JavaScript map. We have a URL alias, which allows you to talk to the outside world. And we have a constant alias, which can pass a global into an inventing function. For instance, if I wanted a constant alias, I could do something like, let's see, I want to new binding type, constant alias. I could do something like debug true. Okay. And now I go next, add code. Here's the code that we loaded. Okay. Now I put in debug true. Okay. So that's just for fun to make that work. If debug, because this acts just like a global. Hopefully I can spell correctly today. If debug log debug. I mean, I'm not really doing a different code path or anything, but I am showing you how to pass something in. Okay. And that could control how we do things. Okay. Now, if we look at this function, it says, I got to have something that looks like this to trigger my curl request. Okay. So that's sort of a filter. If it's not that, it'll return. I could have 1 billion documents in my collection, but I have to have a key that looks like that in order to trigger this. If it gets past this gate, of course, then it says, I'm going to take the URL in the settings. We'll go back and look at that. Then I'm going to append latest to it. And then I'm going to get the exchange request API, and we can check the HTTP responses and print what went right or what went wrong. Okay. Now, obviously, I might put the debug on everything working correctly to suppress it, but we want to see this work. So I hit, I'm going to copy this. This is important because that's the only way I'm going to be able to trigger it. Save and return. We have our eventing function. And when I said this is really easy, there's our function. We would paste this in. We would set our settings up that it explains this. Do this URL alias. Exchange rate API is this. And then the latest gets appended to that when we're talking about the code. So we're pretty much ready to run. So we're right here. We're going, everything's the same. And we're really going to request this base API with latest, okay? Because in our code, we take a quick peek, we are saying, hey, put latest at the end of that path. Otherwise, the path could just be blank or we don't even make it. So we're ready to go. So let's deploy this. This is up and running. Okay. And we'll go to our documents, and this was bulk data source. We have to add a document, and this is a trigger document. It doesn't matter what I put in here. This could be A, B. Okay, it doesn't really matter because it's only looking at the key. It's not expecting the document itself. It's only expecting the key of the document. So I save that, and I'm going, all right. Well, that happened. Now, what's going on with our eventing? So this is deployed. Did anything happen? Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. So we printed, this is reverse ordered, okay? And it is across all your eventing nodes, okay? So if I had 15 eventing nodes, this would all kind of come together from all 15 nodes, okay? So the first thing we did was we print that debug, okay? Then we just printed the exchange rates, okay? So that is just a real basic thing on how to do this. If I go back to this scriptlet, we get our function there, we set our function up. Here's our input data. This is what we expect, output data or logged, okay? And that, of course, I printed it, okay? That's a really neat thing. Now, we can do other stuff like keep last n, okay? So let me just take a look at this. We're going to do listen to the same source bucket, same metadata. We have a couple different bindings here, okay? So I could do advanced keep last n that uses CAS, which is a little faster. This is for 6.0. So if I cruise to the little faster thing where eventing can now do CAS, let's talk about this. This is keeping an array to keep the last 3 changes, okay, of your documentation. And it starts to look a little bit more complicated because it is. We are trying to use CAS and determine whether or not R write one. And if we try to write something and somebody else beat us to it, then we'll kind of get in a loop and we'll retry, and you can have a hot document and things slow down. So let's see how all this works. So we got this document, we have our setup. Here's our input data. This is the way to get your input data in to trigger it. And this is the data we expect. We expect to get 2 documents, okay, when we end up doing this particular function. So let's get this cooking real fast. I'll go back to source, and let's just get rid of that one document there, which we don't need, and eventing. Let's undeploy this, and let's import a new function. And that was advanced keep last n or keep last n. So we're going to import this function instead of, getting all these little dials dialed in and getting our binding in. So we are going to be able to write back to our source bucket, okay? Next, add code. I'm not going to deploy it right now. I'm going to put our data in, okay? The scriptlets are great because they just make it really easy to get your eventing function up and running, to understand something. So how am I going to get the data in? I'm just going to use the query engine here, and then, I've already got it right there. Paste it, execute it. Okay. So now we've got some documents in our source data, okay? So here it is. It's like all broken up, and 10 to whatever. So I've got these 10 documents. Let's deploy this function. Here we go. And this will go to town. It'll read from everything, and you'll end up with the last 3 suffixes for the middle component between the delimiters. So when this is all done, we'll have 2 new documents in here right there. Okay. So what we're doing is we're going, we're trying to figure out some things based upon, the last suffix 1 2 2 2 1 1 1 1. That was the important thing. So these are user notifies when they end in those last suffixes. So we get these 2 documents, and they will be very, very. I'm looking at this and I'm going, did I do this right? Was it subject to dedupe? So let's cancel this. Let's go to eventing and we will undeploy, and we'll deploy in a second. And I have to say something didn't quite work the way I thought it worked. Maybe I haven't updated this document lately, or it might be because it was subject to a dedupe operation. I don't know. So we'll try this really quick and redo it. So eventing right now takes about 15 to 18 seconds to undeploy and deploy. Why, you might ask, does it take so long? Well, each node has to open up DCP streams to coordinate with the database change protocol. And there's coordination to make sure that we get everything perfect before things start running. So it's not as simple as, hey, just open up a KV feed. But once it's up and running, it's really, really fast. I shouldn't say KV, access KV, not KV feed, access KV from an SDK. Okay, so we're up and running. Let's take a peek at our documents again and see if it looks like I expect it to do. Yep, there it is. So we had a subject to dedupe issue, okay? And so now as things are coming in, I'm keeping the last 4 items. So for user ID 1, I expect that 4 and 5 and 8 would be the most recent. So I look at this, user ID 1, I have a 4, a 5, and an 8. They're the most recent. Well, let's make 1 the most recent. I'm just going to goose this and make a new mutation, okay? Then we'll go back and we'll take a look at this 4, 5, 8, and it says 8. And I'm just going, that didn't seem right because I know I just changed that. User ID 1, 4, 5, network ID 8. And why? I changed that. Was I looking in particular? Well, this didn't work out too good because I would have to waste some time to figure out why I didn't make this work correctly, okay? If I have time during the questions, I'll go back and take a peek at that. And let me just do a different thing. Let me just create one. So we're going to add a document, new. And let's see, did we get that? Are we even running? Cancel. This is not good for me. I feel terrible that I didn't do a good demo here. So I'm going to move on to something else if I get my mouse back. I apologize. I just escaped. Hey, Nitish, I seem to have a frozen mouse.
Yes. Yeah.
If you could cancel my screen share and then I'll go in again.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
John, this is really interesting. One of the things that I started thinking about when you were talking was, in like real world, like eventing and stuff, one thing that I had in the financial industry, this is a very common problem, is that they want to log everything, right, forever in a day. So they want to, every single time something changes, they want to log on that. And so I could see that where this would be really awesome is that when you're trying to keep track of financial transactions, you could literally have a separate document for history that writes out the history in a way that's readable to a human, while not having to embed that information into the document and bloating the document too big. Because obviously on financial transactions, if this is a long document, it could explode, right?
Aaron, I got to be very careful. Remember, the mechanism of dedupe, okay? If I have a lot of changes, we might see only the most recent document. So that's a very dangerous thing.
This is a good thing to know then, right? So that would not be a good example.
You would use our transactional SQL++ or Nickel because we have transactions in that when you do that, okay? You can keep a history of everything, but I would not want to do that if it's, if a document represents $1 billion, I don't think
Sure.
you want to do that.
This is more like transactional history of like what a user did. Like the user changed the customer's last name, right? These are the things that like usually account representative will go, who changed the last name on this? And they go look, and they say, oh, Barb did that yesterday at 5 o'clock, for example.
Okay, I gotta ask: has Nitish stopped my screen share because it is still?
Yep.
You don't see my screen. I am so hung up on everything to do. Control Alt Delete. I have to kill. No, I have no. Oh, you know what it is?
Demo gremlins.
No, I'm thinking maybe I need a new battery in my mouse.
Right? It's always the least likely suspect, right? Eventing seems really cool. It seems like the old school triggering that you used to have like in SQL Server or Oracle, right?
Okay, Nitish, can I get my? I'm going to share my screen again. I apologize. I mean, I'm seeing this frozen, and I'm just going, oh my gosh, what in the world is going on?
I'll let you go back to it.
Sure. At least we figured it out, right? Okay, so I showed you a couple very, very brief things about eventing. There's some. Let's do another cool one, and I say it's cool. So. Let's see. I don't want to do that. I want to just sort of reset everything here. And we're going to do one more script. And then I'm going to do, let's do, okay. I'm just trying to think. We're going to do some generic manipulation functions. Let's say I want to flatten my data because for some reason I've got to get my data into, I got to get my data into, let's say, an RDBMS. I don't know why, but I do. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Here's a function that's called generic flattened data. Okay. So this time we're going to go through the entire pane of it all. Okay. This is, we don't want to undeploy that one. We don't need that. I'm going to just go add function. And I believe I want to go into source. Nope. Data, nope, bulk, data, source. Okay. Now, RR100 means resident 100. Okay. So I'm saying that the eventing, you might want to keep memory resident, whereas you could go down to 10% residency in the bulk. Okay. So this was something like generic flatten. Okay. And then we're going to have some bindings. If I go back, this just says, hey, what bindings do I want? I want bulk data destination, bulk scope, binding type. Okay, dest call. All right. So I'm going to go back here. Going to add a binding, bucket alias, DST call for destination collection. And I think it was bulk, right? And data. Now, we don't have destination. I'm going to make it target, okay? And then read write, all right? So this is really everything I need, okay? And now, since I didn't have that collection, we made it target. I put it in here. This is still going to work because that binding decoupled you from the key space. So I could have a whole different set of buckets and key spaces in my dev environment and decouple it in my prod environment. And we have a way to just extract the code via a REST API and then add the app code into the production environment so you can do CI/CD pipelines and you can automate everything and pull things out of Git. And I mean, it's pretty cool. So I save and return, and we got this function, okay? Generic flatten. So let's deploy it, and up it runs, okay? And remember I said these scriptlets, they're really nice. So here's my input data. I go, my data to flatten is my key, okay? I just copy it. Now notice I copied my key here and the document? Yeah, this is kind of a cute thing to do. So remember, we're doing this bulk data source. I add the document and we just highlight it. We paste it. Now it's illegal because I put the key in with it. Take the key out. It's a legal document. Save it. And there we have it. So let's take a look at our document. Okay, this is the document. Okay, it's a highly nested document. Can't go into an RDBMS. Okay, so what do you do? I mean, there's an impedance mismatch. I mean, because I got the same names. I got a V there. I got a V there. What in the world do I do? Okay, so we have this eventing function. We're gonna. It says it's deployed. Now, it's already run. Target. Because it runs in real time. See what we did? We appended the IDs with underscores, made the path. We just flattened this data, okay? Pretty cool stuff. Now, let's say I go type ID. I could change the first B that says my object. Okay, that's pretty easy. You know, this is real time, and it's a post trigger. So I go, there's my object, my big object, right? Save that, and then we'll switch back to the target, and we'll open it up, take a peek at it. My big object. Very good. So that's good. Let's just push that stuff again. Now, this will automatically, or at least it should automatically undeploy. That's fine, because I flushed the all the buckets, and it was listening to it, and it says, hey, there's nothing there. If it got flushed, let's undeploy ourselves. I'm going to do one more example, and then we'll start getting into really big data sets, okay? So the example that I'm going to do is it's actually convert XML to JSON. Now, I have, this is a scriptlet that does this, but we also have a large dzone blog, and we also the same blogs on couchbase.com too that talks about saying, hey, if I have XML but I want JSON, I mean, how do you search XML? You could put it into full text search, but you know, it's a string. Okay, so you know, I'm going to go all right. So we also have, this is a scriptlet. Okay, and you know, we have some input data. So let's just grab our input data. Okay, there's our key. And we go here, and then I'm just going to go to documents, and we go back to our source. We're going to add a document. There's some input data. That's my key. I don't want key there. I just want XML. Okay, save it, and then we take a look. Okay, here's our data. You know, it's just has an author, Bob Dylan, and, you know, some price and the year it came out, whatever. Made it up. That don't quote me on all that, right? So we go in here and we say, okay, time for our eventing function, all right? And these are all undeployed. We're going to import, and we're going to import convert XML to JSON, okay? And it's a fairly simple function. Okay, and it's going to write back to the source document. It could go to a different document. Remember, so this is the map to go to the source we're listening to. And here's the code. Since I'm running 7.0, that information doesn't mean anything, right? And also, I don't need match all was an update to a later version of the node runner. I mean, look at this function. It's just, you know, it's pretty tight, pretty sweet. It's mostly, you know, printing stuff out. A little parse function. Regex magic, okay? Okay, so I like it. Let's save it. Let's run this thing and see what happens, okay? So we are going to do convert to XML. Let's minimize those. We don't need those. We're going to deploy this. This will print some items, okay? When it runs, that's our input data. Our output data will be some data, but we're also going to get some log messages, okay? So we go in here. What do we expect to see? This is deploying. It's not quite there yet. Should be close. Nope, not yet. Come on, come on. At least I think we were printing there. There's our log messages. Okay. So we get our input. It was XML. It made a checksum. Why did it make a checksum? We'll go and look on the code and I'll explain that. And then we have a new output doc. Okay. So let's talk about this checksum. Okay. So I am saying that this process that recursively goes down and breaks up the XML and then it makes the stuff. If you have a huge document, this could be pretty heavy duty. So when I get this all done, I am going to actually write a checksum out, okay? And if that checksum don't match, I have to redo it again because there's been a change. But if the checksum does match, which is this CRC64 function, oh, I know there's been no change. I just reran a million rows or a billion rows of data. I don't really need to do anything. Okay, so that's the whole gig. So this is a filter saying if our checksum hasn't changed, we know we haven't changed our document. That's all. So we know that we ran this. So let's go back. Let's look at our documents. We have a data source. That's what goes in, and it got a new field here. Well, that's kind of cool. Well, let's up the price. Let's see what happens when we up the price. $12.90 instead of $10.90. Okay. Now, the neat thing is, this is now $12.90. That has been turned into JSON, which you can index and you can use SQL++ or Nickel, whatever you want to call it, and you can access this thing natively. So you got the best of both worlds. Couchbase is an XML database. I mean, and there's our little checksum, and there's no need to do anything. The checksum's the same. So we've been doing this with one document, okay? But what if we have lots of documents, okay? So I'm going to go up here, and I've got this little Perl script. Let's make this big. I say little Perl script. I don't know if it's little, but it's not that long. And what it does, it's a Perl script and doesn't quite all fit in the same screen. And I apologize. I made the font big, okay? And it just sort of randomly makes a bunch of stuff. Okay, so let's see. It has a little bit of help in here, and we'll show you how this works. Oops, it'd be better if I actually. Okay, so it tells me how to run this. Okay, I could do a bulk of 1 million rows, and then say, hey, I could change that to 2 and start at 2 million. Okay, but what I want to do is I just want to see the first 10 items it would generate. Here we go. So I got Lisa Loeb, Elton John, Sting, Bob Dylan, the Smiths. Okay, so now you know my music. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate, let's see, that'll be 100,000 items of data. Okay, and now I'm going to use CB import to load this data. Okay, it already loaded. Okay, let's take a look what's going on. That source. Let's retrieve our documents. Hopefully we've got, where did I put those? I put those into source, probably default. Okay. So I put these into not source data. I put these things in the source default, I think. They're in source. Default has 100K items. And that is collection default. So, oh, I put them into source default. Okay. So real quick, this will pull in 80 documents, I guess. So let's go back to eventing. I know the data's there. Okay. Now nothing's been updated. Okay. Because I'm listening to a different bucket. Okay. But unfortunately, let's see if I go to settings, cancel, let's undeploy. Some versions of Couchbase allowed you to change your listen to bucket. Other versions didn't. And I'll show you a real quick trick. once we're undeployed, there we're undeployed. I look at my settings. Am I able to change to source, default, default? Yes, I am. And I'm going to throw it out into the same place. Okay, save it. And now I'll just deploy it. Now we're actually listening to something with 100,000 documents. When this thing fires up, it's going to fire up with, I believe, 1 or 3 workers, 1 worker. I probably would have wanted to put 12 to rip through a lot faster. But when this gets deployed, we should get some charts and some information. The chart's delayed by about 30 seconds. This updates every 10 seconds. We've already changed 39,000 rows. As Eventing spins up, there's another 60,000. All the threads start executing. Okay, we're done. I mean, we're done. Didn't take much, okay? And now we're just waiting for the newest thing. So as I said, this chart's delayed a little bit, and you'll see how fast that was running, okay? It'll go up, and then it'll go down because it got done real quick. Let's take a look at this, and let's throw in some more data, okay? And instead of, I don't want to do the same data items. I'll go 2, and let's throw in a bit more data, okay? And this will be the exact same import command when it gets done. And this will take a little longer because we're putting in 10 times more data. And at the same time, the eventing function is running, okay? And it will be responding because it is deployed. And as you can see, we're going up in successes, okay, in our numeric hits. And since this is bigger data, we'll see this go up and we'll see it plateau a little bit, okay? Here our chart starts showing us what's going on. And when I say plateau a little bit, it'll kind of go, this is what I'm running at. And I can freeze that and take a peek real quick. Okay, that's all well and good. I'm going, that's not enough performance for me, okay? What am I going to do? I need more performance, all right? Well, we need more performance, but let's just watch this hump completely before I block your screen out, okay? Because this, we kind of want to see how long this takes. And so we should be at I think it was, 1.1 million when we're done, okay? So this says we're about half done, okay? But we'll wait. So as this is going on, I could do something. We're starting to taper off because some of the DCP feeds to some of the vBuckets will be done. So we don't just get a quick drop off. When this is done, it'll have a slow taper off like it has the slow ramp up. Okay. So bear with me. We're about 3/4 done. I will go in when this is done and, well, actually, you know what? Let's just pause it. Let's do it. Pause the function. All right. We lose our graph. That's fine. When our function's paused, we can go in and it makes a checkpoint. Every vBucket, we know right where we are. We go into settings and we go, all right. I want more performance. Okay. Don't exceed the number of physical cores. I mean, it might be a law of, unless you're blocking on curl. And then I'm going to resume. Okay. Now, this will be sort of interesting. We'll see. We're picking up on the very next mutation. So we haven't lost anything. And when this resumes, it'll take 15 seconds or so. We'll pick up again. And we do get a bit of a reset there, but we're picking up and we're already done. So we did our last 250,000 really quick. This should spike up way past 7.5K, or it was so little it didn't have to. And it looks like it was so little, so we'll just undeploy and we'll do it again. Now, I shouldn't have undeployed. Well, remember I said that we had that checksum? I mean, eventing, you can do a lot with it. The checksum will prevent us from actually writing data. And okay, the op is, it takes time. Okay, so I'm going to deploy this from scratch, but all our documents, if we go into documents, under defaults, were we writing back to the source? Yes, we were. Or were we writing back to source? What was this? This was bulk data. Hello. Target, I think. Now I can't even remember where we were putting it. Oh, no, I think we were putting it into source because we said we were writing back. And, I was mixing examples. So let's get this in here. That's probably a little too much data to pull back. So as we can see, we are translating all these, okay? And they do have checksums. Now let's go back to eventing. And this is probably done already. You go, why did this take from 1101 to 1101.30? Well, it didn't need to write anything, okay? Now let's force another write of another million. And remember, we have 12 workers. We have 24 threads per node. We only have one node. And we'll see this was processing at 50K instead of 7.5 documents a second, okay? I believe this has to do a read, so we are doing a bucket op still, but just showing you that eventing does work at scale. I mean, that's kind of an important thing to note. So this is probably the last example that I'll be going through. Another, actually, I'll go through one more big one with 100 million rows, but we won't wait till it finishes. So we made our data. Now let's load our data, okay? And while that's loading, I'll go to, this is an Amazon cluster, okay? And if I log into this, I hope we'll see I have this preset with 1 million rows of data. And come on. As that UI is loading, see, we're starting to come up. So this is reprocessing our fresh amount of data. And now we'll have 2 million rows of data in here. So we were peaking at about, once again, 40,000 documents a second. So it can run a little slower because this time we were actually generating because the checksums didn't max. Okay. So now looking at this, if this is working, of course, I'm going to look at a little screen here. It is live, but I don't. There it is, finally. So I have 1 million or 100 million documents, okay, on a 3-node cluster. This is 3 times an R5 2x large, okay? And there is an eventing function that's active. And let's see what eventing says. I've got this thing called fix corruption, okay? So I'm going to undeploy this, and we are going to corrupt some data, and then we're going to fix it, okay? As silly as that sounds, that's what we're going to do. I'll view this JavaScript, and basically I'm going to go in, and I'm at row 10,000. Row 10,000. I am going to actually just go to the document ID here, and then retrieve that doc ID. And then I'm going to delete something that maybe is super useful, and it is gone. So I took out user, okay? Now, I could go ahead and do this with the other 3 documents, but So I took out user. Now let's look at our thing. So if doc.user exists, I return. That's a filter. Otherwise, I'm going to do something. I'm going to repair. Now I could have looked up some stuff from some other document sets, kind of like a lookup table, and done some things and really fixed it. But this is to show you the speed at which you could write a point tool. Okay, so if everything's good, return. It could be any business logic we want. If things are bad, do what you want, and then fix your thing. Okay, and then I'm going to print a piece of information. So we go back there. We go, that's interesting. Now the settings, pretty simple. Just the ability to write back to our source bucket with 100 million rows of data. Okay, so let's go ahead and deploy this, and this should fix one thing. Okay, now I've probably already run it, so I probably already have 3 log statements, and we'll end up getting a 4th. Okay, when it fixes the piece of data. Okay, and that was the one that was at offset 10,000. So the fun thing to hear is we can start to see how fast DCP is. Okay. We aren't really doing, we'll only do 1 KV op. Okay. That's all we're going to do. We've got 100 million items of data. That's 1/10 of a billion. Okay. And as you can see, the number is just every 10 seconds, we're showing you, we go from 5.6 meg, not quite 3, but 2.5 million items per every 10 seconds. Okay. And you see that says 400K. So we're streaming 400,000 docs a second on this very modest Amazon cluster. Okay. And so this point tool can rip through our 100 million rows. We're 15% done, and it can fix that item that's broken. Now the item's probably already fixed, so let's just double check. We're looking at, for this particular item, I'm going to go back to documents, and then we're going to look at that item, or look for that item. And do we have a user? Not yet, so it isn't fixed yet. I updated the mutation. It's probably at the tail end of the stream. Okay, so this will be fixed when we get, done through 100 million. Now, if I was actually doing a bucket op, I imagine back to the source bucket, I would be between 50 and 80K a second. Okay, if I was really doing a bucket op. And to let you know the performance of eventing, here is another, it's a public link, and I'll paste this in for you guys, or I'll have, my button link for eventing, and I want to go all the way to the bottom. When you have a good cluster, if we had to write a bucket op, eventing with 6 KV nodes, 4 eventing nodes, and I believe these nodes are all 24 cores running at 2.5 gigahertz, you will be able to stream your DCP data through your function and update a document. Let's say you're streaming from a source collection and you're updating a destination collection at 1.2 million writes per second. Okay, that's phenomenal. That's the performance of Couchbase. So take some of these numbers you're seeing on my OneNode personal box and on this Amazon box, with a grain of salt, going, well, I want faster than that. Well, yeah, guess what? This is streaming DCP, okay, and we're almost completely done. This sort of stuff is let me go back to our, okay. This sort of stuff was writing to a OneNode box, okay. So it's 50K. So, I think I've given you kind of a little intro into eventing. And of course, I messed up one function here. Sorry about that. And I want to open up to some questions.
Sure. Hey, John, it's Aaron. I'm back in. Bring Boz and the Tish back too. So eventing seems pretty amazing, right? So to me, I look at it, and first thing that comes to mind is like with these performance numbers, literally just not possible in the relationship world, right? Because in the relationship world where you have data that relates to each other, you have to worry about those foreign dependencies, right? I have to go join to a foreign key. Now, say for example, I have a join to 3 different tables. I have to bring all that data back before I even start talking about like what how do I process that information, right? And here we're doing it all real time.
Eric, I gotta stop you right there. Eventing can do these joins. I mean, if your data has the key in it, it can join it. Okay. Now we also have something. And I get excited about something, and I know I just cut you off. There is something in the later versions of Couchbase. Okay. And what it is an advanced bucket accessor. Okay.
Okay.
So if I go into our language constructs, I go to advanced bucket accessors or advanced keys-based accessors, and this is the advanced get operation. Now, when we scroll down in this page, and I apologize, I'm using a computer that is just a PC for web browsing, but whenever I do any Zooms or screencasts, it is just really slow. Okay, don't know why. Couchbase version 7.02 has the ability to cache some data. So imagine I have a lookup table, a big 20 kilobyte lookup table that I wanted to link into every document, a billion documents that I was streaming through. It might actually be some rules. It might be my current fraud data set to analyze. Well, this cache, it's read your own write, but typically this is for static, slow changing data. And it loads and it stays loaded for at most 1 second. So I'm streaming 1 million documents through, and every document wants to do a read of this lookup table, but the lookup table gets cached in the eventing system, 1 read per node per second. So if I have 4 eventing nodes, I have 4 KV ops, and it's sitting there in eventing, and it gets into the Lambda, the V8 runner, 25 times faster than a KV op. So you can do some incredible joins. And so we've got some neat tools. It's a complex product, but it's like the SEs at Couchbase, they're starting to love this. They're starting to really pump this out for our client base because we've got some neat things that really help accelerate performance that, it's an order of magnitude above nickel, and nickel's great,
That answered my question. I mean, that's just amazing. I was literally, that's what I was going to go to. And that's just crazy to see that with that, you're getting that kind of performance. That's amazing.
Right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. 18 to 25% are times the performance, not percent.
X,
times.
not percent.
X. Yeah, that's crazy. And of course, JavaScript is the language that just about everybody knows, right? I mean, that's the other beautiful thing. By using JavaScript, it's the most popular language on the planet today. So it's super approachable, really pretty easy. It looks like we have a lot of the built-in functions, like the updating and stuff. Those are all documented in our documentation, so you can learn what those functions are right from the docs.
Yep. And like I say, I've got these scriptlets that do things. About the only thing I didn't really go over was timers. Okay. I mean, we got docs on timers, but it's almost easier to just say, hey, you want to learn about timers, look at a recurring timer, look at how it happens. And that will have information and a piece, so say, set it up like this. And this is the detailed example, make your trigger document and then make your code. And then I'll explain a little bit about this code. Because timers, we took away the asynchronous, there's my slow browser again. We took away the asynchronous capability that they're used to in Node. And come on, there we go. Right here. So I create a recurring timer, and we can do this in the later revs of Couchbase, okay? And I says, I want to create this timer. 30 seconds from now, I just make a date. I add 30 seconds to that date, and then I create a timer. And when that timer fires, it's just going to call a JavaScript function based upon this date I created in the future, and it has some ID. You could put null here and it'll get a unique ID. But if you know the ID and you want to cancel it, then you'd probably pass the ID. But the important thing is the context. When it calls back this function, it knows nothing about what you were doing, because we could be running, 48 lambdas of the same function across 4 nodes, okay? But the context that gets set, we're passing it in here. If I look at this, well, what was this context? I passed it in here. This context, I gotta go, what's the context? Create recurrent. Oh, this was the context. It was pulling out the meta ID, which was the key, and it was doing a mode. My mode was via my first update. Now, when I make my recurring timer via callback, I change my context. So if I actually ran this example, I would see that the first timer was, it was based upon a trigger that was on an update, which was a real mutation in KV, and it recurs. And then at least I know, I just did this again because it's a callback. So,
okay,
when I say that we removed some things from the language, if I go into language constructs, and I apologize for the slowness, we removed global state, but we put it back in 7.0 or 7.0.01 with that constant binding that I explained. We removed asynchronicity, which was we replaced that with the timers. Now, timers are a little fat. Just think of it. You got to burn 800 bytes per timer. So if you had a million timers, you got to have some space in KV, because there's 2 to 3 documents that manage these timers. So use them with a little intelligence. And we took out the browser extensions, but we did add language features, and that might be something to quickly go over. In the documentation, we were doing these bucket or key space bindings, and we says, hey, there's your get operation. We expose that map. There's your set operation, and there's your delete operation. It makes it really super simple. The advanced accessors let us manipulate TTLs and expiries, or let us work with CAS. They're a little more complicated, not as clean to work with. Okay. Then we also added, let me scroll down a little bit. We now have atomic counters, okay, which are really cool, where you can increment and decrement when you're guaranteed that you don't have a collision, that you're going to, if you get 23, no one else got 23. Okay. Then we have integration with nickel, which I didn't show that. So what nickel is in your eventing function, I can write a bare select statement and just assign it to some variable. That becomes an iterator, okay? Then what I do is I do for beer of my iterator, okay? I get that document back as I iterate through those results, okay? And we can also use variables in these, and it's super powerful, but you're shifting down to query, okay? And query, although great, does not run as fast as KV, but there's things you might want to do, okay? So we fully integrate nickel and work with nickel. We can even do, let's see, built-in functions. The nickel function call means you can do dynamic nickel as in running strings, as opposed to bare nickel, okay? I think to myself, nickel or SQL++ injection? Yeah, what could go wrong there? Sure. In 7.1 Neo, we will have full RBAC. And I could even go in and I can show you a preview of that. So one of the things about eventing right now, it runs as admin in 6.5, full admin. In 6.6, it runs as an eventing admin. So you can't do privilege escalation, where eventing admin can't make new users or change, RBAC rules or anything like that. And in 7.1, it is a full-fledged RBAC client, okay? And that's pretty neat. I'll show that in just a second. So we have the nickel function. We have a way to generate a fast CRC on a document. We can create timers, cancel timers, and we can call curl. Those are the language extensions. So if I was going to give you a quick preview, let me do this and just kill what we were looking at and start a different server up. That's okay. And this particular window should have just gone south. Now we're going to just hit retry, and we're going to be on a preview of something that I believe will come out in May. And you know, our internal code name is Neo, okay? But this is 7.1, okay? So as my slow browser, and this is weird because it's instant when I'm not doing Zoom or anything, but hey.
Demo gremlins.
No, it's screencasting, pushing pixels. This is an old 2-core Athlon. I've never really cared. Okay, so now what we've got is we've got full RBAC, okay? And I logged in as administrator just to show you. I made a group, okay? And the group was called Customer 1, okay? And so what is this group, okay? This is our typical RBAC. So I basically open up data so he can do stuff in a 100% residency bucket. He can do stuff in where he needs to work. Now, notice RR100 Cust01, bulk Cust01. Now, I also want him to be able to update his stuff. To use eventing, I have to make him a DCP reader, okay? But I'm only going to let him read out of data. I'm not going to let him read out anything else for eventing, for his source. And then to make like that little UI with the documents where I was tweaking documents, I have to open up RBAC for the data monitor. Now, to allow him to do all the query stuff, this is just the standard RBAC for query, okay? Query inserts, deletes, managing indexes, okay? And then the last thing I do, eventing is now a full RBAC thing. It's basically a tag. All the functions will be under a tag, and the tag is really a bucket scope, okay? So that's RBAC. And I have a user, and that's called Abe from Cust1, okay? And then I have another user called admin. So let's log out the administrator, sign out the administrator. And once I sign out, I'm going to log in as Abe from Cust1. I mean, this is exciting because eventing was super useful, but now it's getting onto the playing field where everyone can use it with just tight RBAC security. And so I log in as that user. And remember, he's a limited user, okay? As you can see, we lost a lot of stuff on that left-hand menu, okay? So I go in and I go, eventing. Hey, Abe, what can you do? Okay, we go, let's add a function. And, before I add a function, let me show you what do we have here, okay? We have, I should have done this as can I see the other scopes and collections? Hang on. Come on in. No. So I have the exact same setup for customer 02 and for customer 03. He can't see these, okay? He can't see the other customers. This is multi-tenancy, which was sorely lacking in 6.x, okay? That we have it in 7.0. So we have other stuff. So he can't see and interact with other customers' data, and that's the whole point of RBAC. So now I can only see a function scope. I tag this thing. That means other people won't be able to see his functions. Okay, so it's all about security. I listen to bulk, and it only lets me to listen to data, even though I have data and target or available, and then my eventing storage, resident 100, eventing or hot docs. I'm putting it in eventing. and my function name. I don't really care what I call it. Next add code, and here we go. We come up and we can make our own eventing function. I say, I love this function. I just go back to eventing. I'm listening to bulk cust1 data. We deploy it. And of course, this should work because I should be able to go to documents, and documents will never let me see the other customers. Okay. The reason why I popped up with insufficient privileges for just an instant, I don't know if you guys caught that. It was tuned into something else. Okay. And so there we have it. There's nothing in there. We can add the document, and I don't care what the document it is, or I don't care what the key is, because this was a quick, simple preview of full RBAC in eventing, which will pretty much is going to open the floodgates of use for eventing. And as you can see, I ran something like this earlier, and now I'm running something different. All right.
Yeah, I mean, this is cool. So it looks like, obviously it's pretty powerful already in the current version that we have in the current releases. You can go out to docs and see all this cool stuff. But it looks like in our next release, we're also going to have a really tightened security so that you can even get more functionality out of it with this more tightened security, and guarantee a better granular security access to functions and data that the eventing runs on.
Definitely. And that's
Awesome.
the goal, to make it a first-class citizen with every other service. I mean, it's been, in my 2.5 years at Couchbase, eventing has just been polished. I mean, the edge cases that some customers hit are going away. The help has gotten better, and the performance has gone up. I mean, it took like an hour and a half to deploy 17 functions in 6.5. And 6.51, each function deploys in 18 seconds, no more, no less. And so you can get done in like 5 minutes if you're doing tons of functions. And, in the future, maybe Morpheus, which would be our 8.0 series, we're looking at trying to support 1,000 lambdas at one time. So,
Wow.
that's a complete rewrite. So, things are kind of exciting. We have some interesting, and I can't promise this. I have to say safe harbor. Okay. We're playing with queues, and as a database queue, we're getting performance up around streaming 50, 60,000 documents a second through queues and topics. And it's a database. Everything's stored in KV. Everything's reliable and safe. And this is something where, hey, you know what? We got customers who use Kafka, but 85, 90% of those customers don't need the overhead. Couchbase is a Swiss Army knife of everything. So you got full text search, you got analytics, you got direct KV, key value stores, you've got SQL++. Well, why the heck not queues? Simplify stuff. Allow asynchronous compute between your application and Couchbase, whether you're pushing data in or pulling data out. I mean, it's just pretty exciting stuff.
Absolutely. Well, John, I want to thank you for coming on and speaking with us. This has been amazing. Folks, if you want to learn more about eventing, go to the docs website. We have the links in here. And we'll also, if you're watching video on demand, there'll be links in the description on YouTube and on Twitch for all the stuff that John shared with us today. I want to thank everybody for, obviously, Nitish and Bas are also joining us for today. I look forward to seeing you guys next month when we have our next meetup. And thanks, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Thanks so much, everyone.